I know how all of you in this room are going to die.
Dr. Mary Lou Jepsen, chairman of the board, Openwater, really knows how to make an audience sit up and listen.
Half of you are going to be taken out by cancer or cardiovascular disease, heart attack, stroke. Then the next 25% by, diabetes, kidney disease, infections like COVID and other things. If you're lucky enough to get to 80, 90, you're going to be taken out by neurodegenerative disease. So we know this. We all think somehow we're immortal, and statistically we know this to be true. So I thought, why not work on these problems? And so I was very happily at Facebook working on advanced virtual reality and augmented reality 7 years ago, running the advanced group of that to enable us to get beyond the screens you're all staring at, so that, and I'm all for screens. I'm a screen pioneer. I love that we've made the laptops and cell phones and other things, but I noticed some things happening, discontinuities in Moore's Law, that might enable us to address this how we're going to die problem that I thought was more important. So I thought, no one else sees this, like the fact that pixel sizes on camera chips we're going to go to smaller than the wavelength of light to enable a different type of physics that I thought could let us see inside of our bodies at higher resolution at very low cost, higher resolution than fMRI or CT.
Moore's Law was taking us to wavelength-sized pixels on a cheap $1 camera chip. A diode laser was developed to register interference patterns and enable directed phase waves to read features like blood flow throughout the brain. Using an array of identical emitters, but with minute delays, enables Openwater to focus and steer waves anywhere in the brain, both for diagnostics and for intervention.
We're building a single piece of hardware that can cure cancer, mental disease like depression, OCD, addiction, neurodegenerative disease, and stroke, which is our first product. And so what we're doing, for example, for cancer is with human glioblastoma, a fatal form of brain cancer, and this could work for all cancers, we noticed that there was a mechanical property for all aggressive cancers that none of the current therapies exploit. The current therapies are basically radiation and chemotherapy that harm both the cancer and your healthy cells, although they harm the cancer more. That's why you lose your hair and so forth when you have treatments. But we noticed that it had a mechanical property, these fast-growing cancer cells, that were akin to the mechanical properties of a wine glass in its brittleness. And an opera singer, I see a wine glass, and so I guess it's a water glass on the table there. An opera singer could burst that glass and not harm anything else in the room at all. So we tried it. We grew up these human brain organoids, which you can do now. We've got thousands of little brains. They're in Los Angeles at UCLA. And we grew glioblastoma on them. And we compared our results of finding the right sonification parameters to kill the vast majority of those cells to chemotherapy, best drugs. We're only 5x better right now than the best chemotherapy for cancers. And this can apply to any cancers. So we're growing up all these mice right now, a few hundred mice, and we should be, I hope, in compassionate use for humans at the end of this year, because glioblastoma is a death sentence. But then we have other agencies coming to us saying, can we try this on other aggressive cancers that also have these properties? So we can find basically the magic harmony of sound that basically blows up that cell. And when you blow up that cell, it's not like it's ballistic. It just sort of melts, but it releases proteins that then vaccinate your body against the very cancer.
The key thing here is that we're not talking about multi-million-dollar scanners, probably the most expensive equipment in the biggest hospitals, but a low-power headset device based on consumer-level chips that could even be used in the home.
If you can get your immune system working to fight the cancer, that's pretty profound. And all of this can be done ultimately in the home. There's no reason this can't have CE clearance or UL clearance to be used at the home, but we're going through the FDA because, honestly, it's my first healthcare product. I've got lots of regulatory, clinical people, neurosurgeons, and so forth. helping us navigate through the best way to do it. But we just tried the headset right before the holidays, and then on another 10 patients for mental disease, for treatment-resistant depression. And what happens in depression is you can actually see it on an fMRI. Neurons are overfiring. You go into a loop. The technical term is ruminative negative thought. And for example, in your default mode network, which is here and here, you can see under fMRI areas lighting up. So what we're doing is at different frequencies and dosages, firing exactly to those areas to quell those neurons. The patients report a feeling of euphoria. They then score lower on scores of depression, and the fMRI changes. We no longer see those hot areas. So they all seem correlated. We've only done, I think, 15 patients. We're starting a serious trial this year of it. We wanted to sort of get the frequencies right and the dose levels right. And now we're being pulled to do that with the same unit for neurodegenerative disease for addiction. Like when you are depressed, you want those thoughts to go away. So you grab for the bottle or the drug or the gambling, whatever the thing is. And so that makes other areas overfire.
What next? Asks the interviewer Harry McCracken, Fast Company's global technology editor. Where are you at development?
Are there any basic unsolved challenges ahead for you, or do you kind of know where you need to go and it's just a matter of chipping away at it until you get there?
It's regulatory. So our first product is a stroke detector for large vessel occlusions, which is, stroke's the number 2 killer in the world, and the vast majority die of something called large vessel occlusion, which is the large vessels, which basically block more blood downstream. So if you block one of these 3 vessels in your head here, the anterior cerebral, middle cerebral superior, middle cerebral inferior, the majority of people that get that die or don't walk again, don't talk again, don't have a job, don't go home again. And there's no reason they have to, because we know how to solve clots. We know how to remove clots. So why do so many people die of stroke? It's a time to diagnosis crisis. In the ambulance or at the first point of care of hitting the healthcare, like we have a hub and spoke model now. That patient needs a thrombectomy. They need something snaked up their carotid artery and the clot pulled out. But that's not, the healthcare doesn't route everybody to the thrombectomy lab. You have to go to the nearest hospital by law in many states, by ambulance, where you sit behind, in our country, the gunshot victims, the stabbing victims, the heart attacks, because it's apparent what they have. So after you get through that and you get maybe a scan, they figure out, oh, there's a stroke. So then they call the helicopter for you, but it's another 2 hours till you get to the cath lab. There's a 2-hour window from stroke onset to thrombectomy, where 90% of people with a large vessel occlusion will have no neural deficit whatsoever if they can get that thrombectomy. But right now, it's hour 8, 9, 10 if you're in the rich countries, and if you're not, it's much worse. And so we are actually literally using a camera chip in everybody's phone that has that pixel size the size of the wavelength of light. We made a really cool laser that pulses. And when we get a bad hologram from that laser, because since we have pixel sizes the size of the wavelength of light, what our image on that camera chip looks like is like ocean waves. And if we see high contrast ocean waves, that's really bad because there's nothing moving. And the only thing moving in 100 microseconds in your head is blood. And so that's like, whoa, let's get this person quickly. If we see regular low contrast, we know, okay, the blood is going through. And so that's how we diagnose it. And we've now amassed hundreds of patients over the last few years by scanning people having a thrombectomy right before their scan to amass the data to prove this to the FDA. So we're expecting, can never say what the FDA is going to do, but we expect approval next year. We'll get another close to 1,000 patients this year to collect that data.
This conference is about IoT and security and all kinds of CIO concerns that are not necessarily glamorous, but really important.
Yes.
How many of those issues do you have to deal with, along with all the stuff more specifically related to the health aspect of what you're doing?
All of them. We're dealing in hospitals and ambulances, and so all of these things that you're talking about are very relevant. It's very interesting to hearing all the architecture issues, and I was just seeing the cover of I'm from photonics background, and in fact, met my husband at NFOEC, if you remember that, the National Fiber Optic Engineering Conference. So anyway, he has a background more heavy in telecom than I do. But the issues are real in hospitals. The infrastructure, I worked at Google, right, and Facebook, like, we're used to good infrastructure. You go to a hospital and like the internet's, like, oh, you can't get it in this room, and like just so many things, and it's, free space optical interconnects could solve some of these issues and other things, but yet I know it's highly regulated, and I don't know why anything in the hospital, I have to click like 10 times and wait an inordinate amount of time to get through another barrier, but like every minute counts in many procedures, and as we're intersecting with it, it's rather frustrating that the perception of the patient's anonymity seems more important than their care in those every minute count situations that I witness. And I know it's hard because I talk to the same people who at best are trying to hold the line and make sure nothing bad gets through, but these people are dying, and it's 1 million neurons a minute that you lose in these cases, more than. So I don't know, is there a way to speed it up? I know 5G should speed it up, and I know you're all working very hard on it.
How much of this is a software issue, and does AI, which is the biggest topic right now in general, play a role in what you're doing?
Yeah, it all becomes a software issue. I do consumer electronics. You know what we live on? 2 to 4% margin, ultimately. Not when it's new, you can charge more, it's new and we break through, but that's where you get to. But for health, can we leverage the $1 trillion manufacturing infrastructure, which is happy to live on that? Like anything you go and touch in a hospital, $100,000. The most expensive rooms in the hospitals are the imaging suites, by far. And so we can take those out. And so this all becomes an AI play, it all becomes a data play. As we, and the manufacturing infrastructure is interested in doing that because they can start at much higher margin than 2 to 4% for innovative products that can cure the diseases that we're going to die of. So everybody's in on that, right? And it also changes, like, what is the hospital of the future? Like, why is there a brick and mortar place? I mean, do you need it? I've spent lots and lots of time in the hospital. I'll spare you, but lots and lots of time. It's the worst place to sleep by far. You're far better at home. So you go for imaging and for surgeries, basically, and for nursing care. And if you're solving for that, that's also an IT problem, as you know, and the AI problem. And yes, all the security, cybersecurity, there really are bad actors out there. So it can't, and it is 20% of the economy as well. So can we do it better? Where can we do it? I've just been at a lot of meetings with the FDA. I don't think the US is the place that's going to innovate here, just because it's such a large country. Can we get some of this stuff working in a smaller space that can try the experiments? Which country is that? Where do we test this technology? There's a lot of tests going on right now, but I can go into many, many reasons on the regulatory issues. And of course, as an American company, we're walking through everything with the FDA, but other countries seem much more hungry to go faster, especially because, did I mention diagnostic levels? Like our stroke detector, there's more light in your optical mouse for your computer than our thing that goes on your forehead. Like, it's really safe. And the detectors are in every single smartphone in this room, and it's non-invasive. It's a little visor we put on your head. So, the meaning of the data needs to be proven, but the safety of the device is, you could UL it and, approve it or CE mark it. And same with the ultrasound units that we're using to resonate your head. those are at extremely low levels. And so it does become this data play as we get them on more heads and more bodies. And then we learn more about our bodies, which I think we're interested in. Most, people want to learn about it. Some people don't. They don't want to know. It's true. But
A fascinating discussion that prompted a lot of further questions. The full 35-minute transcript is available free, and it includes questions on Mary Lou Jepsen's hundreds of patents, the growing recognition of psychedelics for therapy, the impact of lockdown on creativity, further thoughts on challenges of FDA approval, and interesting comments by the chair of UN Digital Health Symposium, Professor Martin Curley. Download the transcript now at netevents.org.